Happy Wednesdays con Wilma Love Bugs. This week we have an amazing book to get into. But before that, please remember to like, share, engage, leave a comment, a thumbs up, as I am still building this platform out and will appreciate all of your help. Muchísimas gracias. Let's get into the book. Last week I got to spend some time at one of my favorite coffee spots and bookstore, Uncle Bobby's in Germantown, where I came across this gem. It was like it was silently calling to my soul, pick me up, buy me. Mind you, I was not in there to buy a book. I was there to get a coffee and spend some time while I had to go do something else for work. But it just called to me. They had an amazing Latina Heritage Month display, which I will upload on YouTube Shorts as it's already on my TikTok and Instagram, which follow me, same name, Wednesdays con Wilma. And I picked up this book. Tías and Primas on Knowing and Loving the Women Who Raise Us by Prisca, Dorcas, Mojica Rodriguez. It is phenomenal. Just a amazing piece of contemporary literature. Just beautiful. I literally cried 2 times while reading it because I felt so seen. I felt so like legitimately, did you investigate and do research in my life? How did you know these things? I see myself into these women that you're describing. I'm either aspiring to be them or unfortunately didn't receive them. So I'm lamenting that part as well. But I'm also rejoicing in the space that I get to be them for other people and other young women in my life. Beautiful readings, beautiful writings, legitimately 5 stars across the board off the bat. Prisca has 20 chapters in the book and they're titled by like quintessential nicknames we've called tias and primas. Like she has like La Tía Loca, La Tía Divorciada, like Book Smart Tia, Prima, um, Prima who doesn't have like women friends, just like so many of like we've either been called these or called a prima or called an aunt that my only interesting indicator is that she's labeling it tias and primas, and I don't know if she's gonna write a book regarding madres and hermanas because I kind of feel like she could have intercepted hermanas into that and those type of relationships that play on to girlhood and womanhood and ascension. And but either way, she did a phenomenal job in encapsulating those relationships of tias and primas. May you are them, turn into them, have received them. You will see so much of yourself in this writing. The first chapter, she kicks it off right off the bat with La Matriarch, La Matriarca, and that was really hard. That was a really hard chapter to read. As we recently lost our matriarch, um, super hard as she's describing her grandmother, how she was an entrepreneur, um, the complicated relationship with her husband, and just this I'm gonna do it and figure out a way for myself and my family attitude that I could see in my grandmother. But one of the direct quotes that was just like, woo, definitely hit home. Her home was not grand, but it was the safest place on earth. It was safe because she felt like a trustworthy protector. And many times, my abuelita, we used to call her mamiada, was just that. You don't know how many times, so many ass whoopings she like saved me and my sisters from because my mom was so super strict with us and wouldn't let us do anything. And my grandma used to just be like, yo, lighten up. Like she would always like remind my mom, like, relax. It is okay. You got too much of a tight hold on them girls. Like just chill. And I just remember like how many times she's intervened in that kind of space. But overall, that's just reverence that she had. One of the main things that Prisca writes about metrics, because I do love her writing in this book in the sense of yes, she writes them in like this grandeur, but there's also this complexity of although you are bigger than life in our lives, there is for those who are still alive. Remember to take care of yourself. Remember that we need you here alive. Remember that before putting yourself first, excuse me, before putting everyone before yourself, put yourself first. Her grandmother passed away in the book very young. I believe she was 15, and her grandma was about like in her 50s. So very, very sad in that space. But she talks about like when a matriarch leaves the family, she leaves like a crater. And we felt that in our own family, so much so that like I feel that there was a passing of the baton to my mother in our family, and how my aunts and cousins have kind of upgraded and promoted my mother from tia, like the tia that they love and care for and always revered, because she has also been a safe space for a lot of my cousins, not to put too much of family business out there. But my mom's home was stable, and there were always the essentials to keep taken care of. And I do remember like constantly having a whole bunch of cousins in and out our home, that when my grandmother passed, there was this like ushering in of, okay, well, we're going to look to you now. And another amazing piece of writing that she put in this chapter, she writes, my matriarch knew when a family was in need, and even given little she had, always managed to carve out some for them. This is my mom. Ever since that I can remember, she's instilled in us, okay, whatever you have, if you're not using, we can, your cousin so and so can use that. And I have more than enough in this. I'm going to go give. And it wasn't even so much like te lo vendo or anything, like, toma, I have more than enough. Here you go. So much so, my mom is like low key, like the Santa Claus of the family. For as long as I can remember us celebrating Christmas, one thing my mom prided herself on is ensuring that everyone in the family received something, no matter how small, big, or whatever. They were remembered that day. And many times, my cousins, their parents didn't have it, right? And so, whether it was un carrito or a handkerchief for an uncle or a robe for a cousin, she has always still, to this day, that those cousins are grown adults, look forward to a regalito that Titi Maria gives them. And it's such a beautiful thing that she's been able to do, that I pray that me and my sisters can carry on in the day that she is no longer here with us. But this chapter really, whew, mm, set off a lot of emotions in that space, and remembering the matriarchs of our family, and recognizing that my mom is now in that space, and how many people depend on her. And it, like I said, just a beautiful, anytime a piece of writing can transcend this type of emotion out of you, Prisca, you did your big one. So, like I said, the book has 20 chapters, but I focused on a few that I just was like, okay, these are heart and soul who I am. The next chapter in succinct was the young Thea. This weekend was a lot, as I was reading this book over the weekend, and my niece's sweet 15 is happening. So many emotions fluttering around. Bear with me. And if you see me looking down, I literally had to write notes this week because I didn't want to forget anything or misquote, because the writing is that good. I want to make sure that she gets her just due. So in the young Tia, she talks about her young auntie in her life. And that is where I started to lament, because I didn't really receive these like heart to heart relationships with my own aunts. I love them, I care for them, but there was so much going on in their lives that they really couldn't be these additional supports to my mom in the way that my mom was for them. So like even my youngest aunt, um, maybe my older sister may have received her in the way um the young Tia is described, but I know for a fact I'm able to be this for my niece and nieces and nephews in the way that she describes in the writing. Um, this is what got me for like the second time in the book. She goes, this is what a young Tia does. She makes her children feel consequential. Her presence is profound. This Tia has always felt like one of us. And it hit close to home as I was talking to my niece over the weekend, getting her ready for her quinces. We were just talking, and I was just like, Anna, like, what do you think of me as your auntie and things like that? And she just looked at me. She goes, Titi, whatever you say you're gonna do, you get it done. And I admire that in you. And I just remember sitting back and being like, holy crap, like that felt so good to know that like she confides in me. I haven't let her down. I'm honest. And she was just like, just speaking in that space that we normally don't always get to speak to one another. And more importantly, in her 15 years of life, as I've been an additional support in my sister's life as a part of a member of her village, there has been constant times of like, hey, like let's take a chill pill, let's calm down, she's a kid and let's regroup and like kind of being like the referee and manager of emotions and all. And even telling my sister like, yeah, you need to apologize to this child because this child is a human and is experiencing this life and she deserves that apology. Like we're going to break that cycle that you're the adult, she's a child, and she doesn't deserve to get an apology when you know you're wrong as hell. And then there's also when my niece is just a little too sassy, and I gotta remind her, baby girl, when you go home, I ain't there. I can't save you when you home, so reel it in. But it is so amazing how she writes about this idea of like she was an activist back in Nicaragua, um, part of this program to endorse and uplift literacy in the country, and how she was just able to live freely and be herself, and how like she talks about like as her niece sees her and experience life through her eyes, gets to see her date and gets to see her um, enroll and ascend into adulthood in a way that sometimes the roles are reversed, where we see children or our nieces and nephews do that, but never remember, like not really putting into perspective that they're also seeing us. And that also brought me like tears of joy as I remember my niece met my husband when she was 9 years old, and he's been in her life ever since, and she's been able to see how we interact and what does that look like for her, what does this relationship look like. So much so she's always saying like DOT, as she calls him, she's like, he always helps you out, Titi Wilma. She's like, he's always helping around the house. He doesn't just sit around. And I was like, that made me proud. Like you're seeing partnership in real life. You're seeing gender roles be assuaged out of the relationship because it's about who can do what. It doesn't matter because you're of this gender, this is what you need to do. But I for sure love reading this and being able to attest that although I may have not received it, I'm able to give this to my nieces and nephews. Another quote in this chapter, she writes, young tias give nieces, nephews, and nibblings the gift of making them feel witnessed. And how awesome is that? Like, that is a beautiful thing to give to your nieces, your nephews, those children around you, is that we see you, we're here for you, we're another ally. She writes about how like sometimes we're not as too far gone in age between our nieces and our nephews, and therefore we're able to advocate and see ourselves and be a part of it. And she calls us like the cool tia, and it's like, yeah, I like for instance, I may not know all the lyrics to this sexy red song, but I know it's not for me, but I'm not gonna condone it for you. Like I'm not going to sit here and be like, ah, yes, I'm música. No, that's what the kids like. I can see why they like it. I don't have to like it, but I'm not going to yuck their yum. The next chapter of where I'm at in life, she titles it the childless Thea. Well, not like the next chapter in the book, but the next chapter that I wanted to discuss because there were like four chapters that were like, Wilma just got your name written on it. One of the quotes that I love that she entered into the book, it says, womanhood becomes directly equated to motherhood, and a deficient in that department must mean failure, and we signal that to her even when we think we are not doing so. I have been childless by choice all of my 37 years of life. And from the moment I think I was like early adulthood, it has been constant asking of, ¿y el novio? ¿Y cuándo te va a casar? And when you're gonna have children? And it's just been like, oh God, like there's so much to me than just that. And then at once getting married, it was like, oh, when y'all gonna have babies? And it's like, first of all, how rude of you to not allow us to live in this season of our lives as newlyweds. But two, why are you in my uterus? Why are you in my ovaries? and you so worried about when we're gonna have children. You're not gonna be a support to us. You're not doing anything for childcare. You're not going to assist in any real way other than like you just are excited for us. And I get that excitement, but also like there is more to me than whether or not I'm going to decide to put my ovaries into use. um, this particular chapter, she speaks about childless tias on two separate ways, right? One, a childless by choice tia, and one of infertile childless tia. And how like the visceral rage of hearing like, oh, you can't have children, you should adopt. Like, how dare you deduce her infertility to whether or not she adopt? Like, that's not even where it should even go. And if that is something that Thea wants to, or that woman wants to get to, that is for her to get to on that journey on her own. Um, there is this like, I know for me and for my girlfriends, I've talked about like in our culture and in our families, a lot of the times like they don't see us as full adults unless we bust out a kid, and that's when it's like, oh my God, you're an adult. And it's like, no, I've been an adult. I've been taking care of myself. I've educated myself. I've held a job and done all these things. And just because I decided not to have a child does not make me less a vet. I honor parenthood very much. I see it as a very, very important and pivotal job. And I waited this long to even play with the idea of ever turning from childless to child Thea, because it meant that much to me that I had the right partner, that I wasn't just having a kid for kid's sake. There is responsibility in being a parent that you just don't do haphazardly, because I refuse to give my child anything less than I ever had, right? And I don't mean like just a two-parent household. I mean anything less. This child will be supported. If I waited this long, this child will be supported in so many ways that I get to do it on my terms, if I'm even blessed to do it at all. And you don't get to ask me about it, because those are my decisions and my choice on how I unroll and unravel that information. This was just so, ooh, I had to sit with it, because there's moments when I could see the seething in me, and there's moments when I can see the compassion, as I do have a childless Thea on the infertile side on my family, and she has always just been this like fun, energetic, who she is type of Thea. So much so that she resembles a lot, or should I say, my older sister resembles her. That when she was at her job back in the city, there was a client who was like, I saw your daughter on the other side of the city. And she's just looking at her like, no, you didn't. Because she's like, in her mind, she's like, I ain't got no kids. And they were like, no, she really looks at you. And she remembered my older sister was in town that particular weekend. So she was like, oh, you're probably talking about my niece. And like, they had a good laugh. But being able to see that and see how people react to both, I think on the childless side, there's this like non-compute factor of like, why would you choose that? Like, especially in very Latina households, women, that's what we're quote unquote told to be wives, mothers, and that is the completion of our full cycle. And to have that choice is kind of like odd for them, because I don't think that for them they really did have a choice. Um, a lot of Latinx countries are very Catholic, so like the thought of pro-choice probably was never something in their mind. It was just this sense of duty, and whether they wanted to or not, that's what they did. So for us to have that choice in them, I think may rub them the wrong way, but that's something that they have to work with internally. That's not on me. The last book, excuse me, not the last book, the last chapter that I want to touch on from Diaz and Primas is the book Smart Prima. Um, I was very intentional in picking out like Prima and Tia, as I've been interchangeably those two roles. And the book Smart Tia really hit home to me in this way of, our families love to revere education and knowledge, and yet do not have the understanding of the support it takes to push a brown child into those spaces that are normally predominantly white institutions, and it isn't just about getting the grant, getting the scholarship. There is so much additional support that goes into that higher education role. She writes, a lot of the time, like the book smart prima is the prima of first to go to college. And then I was just jotting down like, for me, first to go to college, check. First to get married traditionally, checked. I was in the gifted program in elementary school. And she talks about like this form of displacement and kind of like a double displacement if you also are like an like migrant from your country. When you go into these places of feeling so out of water. And I just remember being in college, and my dad and my mom would get on me so much because I wouldn't call because I just could not fathom telling them like this shit is hard, bro. And they'd be like, and even when I did try to tell them, they were like, oh, but you're smart, you'll figure it out. And it's like, no, it has nothing to do with education and intelligence. Like, this overall is hard. And I'm coming in from a different socioeconomic like class. I'm coming in, although I may have been the brightest and smartest in my cohort, I'm coming in with folks who were always the brightest and smartest. And there was just this like trying to find footing in that space. And like she talks about like, this prima is reading books all the time. And that's who I was as a kid. Like I was always trying to find a space to go to. I was always reading the Babysitter's Club book left and right. Like I was just always inhaling and needing a moment to like just take in. And I was always a curious by nature child. That she talks about how like we'll go from like, oh, that's so cute, the book smart kid, book smart prima who goes to the library, to eventually we will surpass our family members in education, and we'll ascend from like that book smart prima to like they don't know what to do with us, and like we'll be full of a lot of knowledge that they can't compute or like even deem worthy, because for them they've got it out the mud, right? Very street smart, they're figured out. They've graduated from the school of the hard knocks, as they say. Definitely one of those like wow, just wow. And that eventually parents just wouldn't understand. Like she talks about like her being in the doctoral program and like not her mom not understanding, like she just doesn't have the time for these things. And like it made me laugh because I don't think my mom even knows what I do in life, because I've just reduced it down to like social work. Mind you, I done got several promotions. I don't even do direct work anymore, but it just makes it easier to just say, yeah, I'm just a social worker, because I don't think she's ever really, I mean, outside of me being in college and getting my degree, care to know. Like she just knows I'm employed. I don't ask her for money. I take care of things, and that's all there is to it. Like that's what it is. Um it was also like this sense of loneliness to feel as the book smart prima. Um because a lot of times she's the oldest in her family, but I'm the youngest. Um but that didn't stop from like being parentified, especially with when you have bilingual families. I was a translator for many parts. All three of my sisters at one point have had to tap into that role. And we really had to learn and teach, and when they didn't need us in that parentified role, they wanted to put us back in the child's place. And it's just like I know too much now in two languages, so you cannot just ascend and descend me from these spaces at your leisure. There is an understanding that I am conscious and involved in our lives, that you practically put me in because of necessity. But yeah, it was really, really hard to see those aspects of us, and also this sense of like accomplishment of like, I did that. I was the first in my direct family to go off to school. And I'm grateful that I can have a wealth of knowledge from my little cousins to come to me and talk to about financial aid, and talk about the academic experience, and try to instill in them something that wasn't instilled in me, is that take up space, you matter, you belong there, you have every right to be there, just like your peers, and you will figure it out. I know for me, figuring out meant I got to be a part and take in a space of being in this chosen family. I joined a Latin sorority. I was part of other cultural clubs. I tried to immerse myself in that academic culture as much as I could because I needed to find space that made sense for me so that I can complete this goal in my life. Again, could go on and on about this book. Prisca, this book was such a gift to receive, such a gift to read, such a gift to be seen. And I know that growing up, I didn't have a lot of Latina books and authors. We had the Sandra Sinceros, we had, Piritames. But to really talk about something where it's like a mirror being reflected. Gracias. Gracias, gracias, gracias. This book was beautifully written. I also have your first book for Brown Girls, beautifully written book, and I look forward to reading anything you put out. 5 stars across the board. Gracias. Again, thank you for spending some of your Wednesday con Wilma. This has been a pleasure, and I will see you next week as we end out our Latina Heritage Month book series and see what else I'll be reading next week. Bye. Ciao.